The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are simply that, opinions. All are presumed innocent until proven otherwise in a court of law. Sensitive topics are discussed. Discretion is advised.
I'm Vinnie Politan. The subject of my investigation is a journalist named Jeff Garriman. You know, the job of a journalist like me, you're supposed to expose the powerful, hold them accountable for their actions. And that's exactly what Jeff Garriman was doing in Las Vegas. But prosecutors say Jeff Garriman doing his job as a journalist cost him his life. Here's his story. Jeff Garriman was a true journalist, a man who did intense investigations and reporting, a journalist who held the powerful accountable. Jeff worked for the Las Vegas Review-Journal. His investigations looked at everyone from law enforcement to corporations to local politicians. One of the local politicians Jeff wrote about was a Democrat named Robert Tellis. Tellis was the Clark County Public Administrator. Jeff published a series of investigative pieces uncovering turmoil in the administrator's office and claims of bullying, retaliation, and an inappropriate relationship between Tellis and a staffer. After these articles were published, Tellis lost his re-election bid. Then 3 months later, Jeff Garriman was stabbed to death. The murder sent shockwaves through his newsroom, and investigators quickly followed a trail that led to Tellis, who was arrested and charged with murder. Tellis says he's innocent and is now preparing for a contentious trial in Las Vegas. And obviously, the story of Jeff Garriman includes Robert Tellis, because this is the man accused of killing him, of murdering him, because he was a journalist. I want you to take a look, though. We need to get to know Robert Tellis a little bit. This is a guy running for local office as the public administrator. I want to show you something really interesting, because I think it gives you a little insight into who he was and publicly what his persona was. Here's a campaign ad for Robert Tellis.
Hello, I'm Rob Tellis, and I'm your Clark County Public Administrator. A few years ago, when I started my first term, I found a disturbing situation at the office. Unfortunately, I found that there were cases that weren't being closed and hadn't been closed for years. I also found that checks to families were waiting to go out so long that the checks went stale before the families could get them. Tragically, there were even situations where the family members died before they could receive their own checks. But I'm very happy to say that we've turned that all around under my leadership. My staff and I have increased our customer service levels. We are now closing cases, and we are also making sure that checks get in the hands of families even faster. And we do it for you. I'd like to ask you for your help now. I'd like to ask you to please be sure to vote for me in this year's election. Please be sure to tell your friends and family about it. This is an important race, and I need your help. I'm Rob Tellis, and I'm running for Clark County Public Administrator. Thank you. I am Rob Tellis, and I approve this message.
And you saw there at the end the picture with the family and everything else. He's a politician, okay? But there is a little bit of a cheese. There's something about him that just strikes me the wrong way. And obviously, we're looking at this in 2020 hindsight. But let's get to the heart of all this. Really, my first question in this case is, what was he being investigated for? Not by the DA, not by police, but by Jeff Garriman, the investigative journalist. Let me bring in my guests who are going to help us through all this. Retired police commander and host of Profiling Evil, Mike King, is with us. Also joining us, private investigator and founder of Victims News Online, Erica Morse, is with you. Great to have you both here. I want to go through some of this because I want to give you a headline from one of these articles. And Erica Morse, you're a journalist too, you know all about this. Take a look here. The headline of this article was County Office, and there's Jeff Garriman. He's the one who wrote this. He's the victim in the case. County Office in turmoil with secret video and claims of bullying and hostility. I'll read for you the opening paragraph from this. The Clark County Public Administrator's Office, that's Tellis's office, has been mired in turmoil and internal dissension over the past 2 years with allegations of emotional stress, bullying, and favoritism leading to secret videotaping. You listen to this? Secret videotaping of the boss and a coworker outside the office. Mike King, you've worked for the government. What do you think of this? I mean, this is what journalists are supposed to do, right? Take a look at what's happening in public offices.
Exactly, Vinny. And, I think back to my time when I was chief of staff at the Attorney General's office, we would get allegations like this coming in, and you have an obligation to immediately dig into it. But when a news reporter comes and says, hey, I've got some heavy duty stuff here, I've got videotape, I've got people who are willing to come in and talk about problems in the office, feelings of coercion or favoritism, and in this particular case, relationships that are happening inside of the office where someone who has a supervisory role and a position of responsibility and power over a subordinate having a relationship with a subordinate. Those are all big, heavy-duty things.
And Erica Morse, for Robert Tellis being the subject of this investigation, right? A lot of people might just read the article and say, okay, yeah, a little bit of political corruption. But for Robert Tellis, this is his life. This is his livelihood that is at stake, and this journalist is not going to stop. This journalist is going to get the story.
I love this journalist, and it just breaks my heart where we're at with this. But yes, absolutely. Tellis, listen, his campaign, all of his campaign stuff is family man, wholesome. He also came in as kind of a whistleblower with this whole victim check situation. And the communities don't like it. Voters don't like it when they bring somebody in who seems like a whistleblower, who kind of, I don't know, maybe uncovered other corruption and then use that to launch a bid or get into a public seat. And then a journalist comes along, drills real deep and finds out he's no better than the last guy he just replaced. So the other thing is, we don't know what other secrets may have existed. This could just be the tip of the iceberg. And if it was, Tellis may have just assumed or thought that Gehrman, had drilled down that deep and uncovered other secrets that may not have been exposed yet. We don't know how deep this went.
Yeah. This is like a journalist doing real journalism. There's people, he would go after corporations as well. Anyone that has some level of power, right? Someone who has some level of power.
Like you and I.
Exactly. I want to take a look at something else here. Now, despite Tellis denying allegations of having this inappropriate relationship with a member of his staff, the Las Vegas Review-Journal obtained footage that appears to show Tellis and his employee getting out of the back seat of her car together, both of which were married at the time. Not a great look, rough moment, obviously, for her, but for Robert Tellis, he's in charge of the office. He's the man in charge. What does it tell you, Mike King, if it was co-workers who actually obtained this video?
Well, I think it reminds us how important it is that the people in the office understood what was going on. The people in the office had the relationship to hear maybe through the grapevine what was going on, and had the prowess to go out and actually capture the video. They knew when that employee was going to leave and the boss was leaving at the same time. And I think this really shows this power of position power and this position of trust that these leaders have, and the responsibility that they have to avoid even the appearance of evil in something like this. Vinny, I had a lot of meetings in my career. I don't think I ever did them in the backseat of a car with an employee.
No, doesn't work that way. Erica, I want to read for you the response from Robert Tellis to all of this. He said, and this is responding to the article and the backseat video, "I think it's horrible that they recorded this, and they're trying to destroy my life and my marriage when I'm actually infinitely in love with my wife. I was just trying to get things off my chest with someone who understands. And now it's being framed as though I'm cheating on my wife. What does that tell you about Robert Tellis?
I think there's a level of arrogance here that isn't being addressed. It could be this abuse of power situation or this alleged abuse of power situation. This I'm untouchable, I'm a public official. And I believe his first statement, that this is horrible what they're doing. I believe he believes what he's saying. And so, but I mean, his defense could be, I'm just talking to a friend. We were sitting in the back seat, whatever. We don't know what's going on in their marriage. We just don't know that. So I'm not necessarily willing to go there, but I think that he's very defensive. And I think that from a public perspective, it doesn't look good.
Yeah. Well, I think if he's going to get something off his chest, you could do that in the front seat. That's a front seat thing. That's not a back seat thing. I think the only thing that comes off his chest in the back seat is his shirt, maybe. Might be the only thing that comes off there. So, Mike, as we look at all of this and we look at these allegations and what is sort of brewing in the life of Robert Tellis, but also Jeff Garriman at the same time, I can't imagine that this was the first time that Jeff Garriman had gotten under the skin of someone.
Oh, yeah. And, I love some of those photos of Garriman because he looks like a really likable and a pretty fun-loving guy, but he's a bulldog and he really digs into stories and undoubtedly has faced other situations where people have maybe reminded him of the power that they have. You're talking Las Vegas here, Vinny. Telling stories on a lot of people in Las Vegas could get you in one of those big old drums over at Lake Mead in the bottom of the lake, And so he clearly understood his job. He understood his role, but he also understood the importance of fairly reporting something and exposing something. And that's really the beauty of journalism, whether politicians like it or not, whether we like it as citizens sometimes. They are the ones who usually bring a story to the head.
Yeah, and politicians should expect and invite the scrutiny. That's how we keep them all honest. Trying to keep politicians honest. Did I just say that? Okay. Mike King, Erica Moore staying with us. When we come back, next question. How did they catch him? Take a look at the investigation.
There's been some dispute as far as what the protocol will be. At this point in time, Mr. Tellis, who previously agreed to this protocol, is not agreeing to anything. He wants his day in court. He wants to go to trial in this matter as soon as possible.
It sounds like a mess.
It is.
Robert Tellis is ready for trial. It's going to happen. He's been accused of the murder of a journalist who was investigating him, Jeff Garriman. But how did they catch him, right? I want to show you something first. I want to show you the suspect. I've got some video of the suspect that they had early on in the investigation. Let's take a look at it. You see the person, top of the screen, wearing some orange. This is someone in some sort of a costume or disguise. As we get closer, you'll see it. Approaching the victim's house, and he's sort of lurking there in the bushes. And what police say is that shortly after he was there, Garriman was ambushed, attacked, and stabbed multiple times by this person wearing something orange, right? Well, this man is caught on video. So the whole case here is trying to identify that suspect because early on they believed this is the killer. And we've got that killer on video. So that brings me to our question that we want to take a look at, which is, how did they catch him? You've got this video. It doesn't seem like it's super clear, but how did they catch him? How did they put two and two together? Still with us, Mike King, Erica Morse. I want to put up a picture of the man wearing the disguise because once you get a closer shot of this, you can see kind of what's going on here. So let's take a look at that. It's got this really, I don't even know what to describe that is on the head of the suspect here, but it couldn't be a brighter orange jacket that this person is wearing and carrying a bag. So, Mike King, I'll begin with you. As you start with a suspect who's dressed like that, as an investigator, what's going through your mind?
Well, I mean, the first rule of being secretive is not to dress in a big old flashy reflective orange vest and a hat that's going to stand out like crazy, especially knowing what happens a little later into this investigation. But immediately you're wondering, number one, the heat down there. I get that some people dress and do that to protect themselves from the heat, but is this clothing really something effective for those temperatures that they have in Vegas? And frankly, is it something that would even be appropriate? Most predators will take the time to blend into an area. And it's usually when someone doesn't blend into an area that they're ratted out pretty quickly by cameras or by eyewitnesses who happen to see them in the area. They stand out just enough. And that's probably the biggest mistake this guy made from the very beginning. Whether it's Tellis or somebody else, they're really standing out. I'm expecting that big old blue bag to be filled with candy at Halloween, Vinny.
It's amazing because, Erica, if anyone saw that person, they're going to remember, oh, yeah, I saw someone in the area, this huge, huge hat and this bright orange jacket. Now, they do a search. They've got enough probable cause to search Tellis's home. Let me show you, Erica, what they found. Remember that little bag that he was carrying there? There's the bag. That's pretty significant, right? You find the bag that the suspect, or one that's similar to the one that the suspect is carrying.
Not just the bag, but if I understand it, they found pieces of that orange coat or jacket as well. And I don't know if you're going to touch on this, Vinny, but I just have to make a comment about it. With all the photogs and all the cameramen we've worked with over the years, I find it so obvious and so typical that a photog or a cameraman recognized his gait. I have to say that because as a public official, the fact that he tried to cover up his identity that way, there were other aspects of him that gave him away.
Absolutely. I want to go back inside of that bag. You've got the hat. That beautiful hat was torn up into pieces, and then they were also able, if you look underneath the words there you go, to get the sneakers as well, or tennis shoes. I don't know which term you use, Mike, but this is incredibly important for this investigation because of the ridiculousness of the hat, the uniqueness of it, plus you've got the shoes, Mike.
Yeah, so they've got video at the crime scene of someone wearing shoes that are very similar to the shoe that's seized in the search warrant. But where it really gets tough for this guy to overcome, Vinny, is that now they forensically, according to public documents, have matched the shoe to imprint patterns found at the crime scene. So if and how they find residue like blood residue or debris from the home embedded into the shoe, he's got one incredibly tall mountain to climb.
Yeah, Erica, I'm looking at this case. I'm looking at this incredible video evidence, the physical evidence of the hat and the bag and the shoes, and the motive that is so obvious and overwhelming in this case. And I wonder, what is he going to say? What is he going to say? Because I expect him to tell his story. He can't resist the opportunity to speak publicly.
It is my understanding that his defense is a police frame job. And that's going to be fascinating because they have DNA. And unless you can show me a lab report that says that the DNA found under the victim's fingernails was either degraded or it wasn't skin cells, he's toast. With all this other evidence and then on top of the DNA match, unless he can prove that this stuff was planted and that you've got a bad DNA sample, I don't see how he can get an acquittal.
Yeah, there's something about politicians, you know. At one point, he convinced people to vote for him, Mike. So I guess he's going to try to get 12 more to vote for him as well, but vote not guilty.
That's exactly what I'm thinking, Vinny, is this is a guy who has been successful at being a chameleon or telling people the things that they want to hear. He obviously, with the idea that he wants to talk to the judge and represent himself and challenge issues in the courtroom, whether he's got a background or not, he clearly believes that he's the smartest cat on the block. And this is the kind of guy, I believe, that's going to follow the footsteps of an Alec Murdoch and say, I'm going to take the stand because I am so good at what I do that I can convince this jury it wasn't me.
I see it in his eyes. There's just something different about this guy, Erica.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. You know, I've covered a lot of guys like him, a lot of them. And I'll just say this. I remember when I was a 16-year-old reporter and I got in over my head, and it got so bad that the publisher contacted my parents because of a shell casing left with my name on it.
Wow.
Because I ticked off the wrong politician. That was 30-some years ago.
Wow. Erica Morse,
what we do is
time.
dangerous.
Yeah. We're out of time tonight. You're safe tonight. Erica Morse, Mike King, thank you so much. I'm Vinnie Politan. We'll keep digging for answers as the investigation continues.
Now, back to the Court TV podcast.
I'm Vinnie Politan as we continue our investigation into the murder of Las Vegas journalist Jeff German. It's important to understand what he was doing as a reporter because prosecutors say that's what motivated the man they say is responsible for his murder, Robert Tellis. Here's more. Robert Tellis was a lawyer and politician in Clark County, Nevada. He was also a family man. Jeff German was a hard-nosed investigative journalist who had a reputation for exposing corruption in Las Vegas. One of the subjects of Jeff's investigations was Robert Tellis. So when Jeff was brutally murdered, police looked at Tellis and then arrested him for the stabbing. Tellis says he's innocent and is getting ready to fight those charges inside a courtroom. So how do you go from lawyer and politician and family man to murderer? I think it's important to understand what's going on inside the mind of Robert Tellis. I want to take a look now. This is fascinating. After he got arrested for the murder, he's in jail waiting for his trial, and he does an interview with a local journalist. Take a listen.
What do you have to say for the charge you're facing now?
And unfortunately, I can't comment on it, obviously, given that it's ongoing, and I hope you understand.
Are you able to talk about you and your wife now? You guys work together?
Again, we have a wonderful relationship. I mean, obviously, you know, things are a little difficult to hear with respect to working together per se, but we love each other very much. You know, and
well, how would you describe your relationship with German?
You know, I didn't have a relationship with Mr. German per se. So.
Did you ever try to work with him on any stories in the past?
No, sir.
I guess DNA evidence and certain evidence found at your home, links you to this. What do you have to say about that?
Yeah, unfortunately, I can't comment on the case. I'm sorry.
What would you say to those past allegations of a hostile work environment and sexual misconduct in the workplace?
I've laid all that out on the website. It's false. And, you know, the work that we did in that office was very important and very good. We did have a lot of accomplishments. We were able to change laws to support families in probate. The office was running very, very well. And unfortunately, there were some folks who just weren't happy with the changes because it affected their pocketbooks. And it's unfortunate the way that things went down.
Did you murder Jeff German?
Again, sir, I cannot comment on the case in any respect whatsoever, sir.
Is there anything you want people to know about you?
It's just really, again, that I am someone who is human. I've, all my life, tried to do great work for people. I used to volunteer, donate, and just generally try to help anybody who needed my help. And so that's who I am. If anyone wants to believe otherwise, that's their choice, but I'm just somebody who's trying to do his best to be a good person.
Something about him, like in that interview behind bars, charged with murder, he appears to be almost similar to the way he was in his campaign video. Anyhow, this brings me to my next question, which is, what's really going on with Robert Tellis? What's going on up here? I need some experts for this. Let's bring them in. Clinical and forensic neuropsychologist, associate professor at Pepperdine University, and author of the book, The New Rules of Attachment. Dr. Judy Ho is with us. Also joining us, board-certified forensic psychiatrist, trial expert witness, and columnist, Dr. Carol Lieberman. Welcome to you both. I need your help tonight. What's really going on with Robert Tellis, Dr. Judy?
Very interesting, Vinny. He is so, in many ways, in demeanor, the opposite of what his former coworkers alleged, that he was a bully, that he would intimidate them, say the worst things to them. And some of the plaintiffs in the lawsuit are saying that they were driven to start feeling like they were depressed, constantly anxious, shaking whenever they saw him coming to work, that they even thought about contemplating suicide, right? And then you look at this person, of course, in a very controlled situation. He allowed this interview. He's doing some PR here, I think. And he's kind of docile. He's very nice. His demeanor is calm. And despite the reporter essentially needling him a bit and saying, hey, I want to talk a little bit about the case. Can you tell me anything? He's staying super calm. And I think he's trying to convey that, hey, I'm not this person that everybody thinks I am. I'm not this monster.
Dr. Carol Lieberman, what do you think's really going on with Robert Tellis? There's good people that go into politics. Then there's not so good people that also go into politics. But when you do that, you want to make yourself very public. So is that any sort of a read into what's going on with this guy?
Well, he is a very interesting guy. First of all, a lot of the people who were interviewed who knew him way back when say that they don't recognize him now, that he's very different. And he comes from a family of politicians. His father was a politician, and he got into some kind of a scandal regarding bribery. And then he has other relatives who, got to be particularly elected in El Paso or appointed. And then even just recently, his cousin was appointed to be the ambassador to Costa Rica. So there's a lot of competition amongst the family. Like he wanted to be a politician too, perhaps surpass them, perhaps show that he wasn't like his father. He wasn't going to have a scandal. Of course, now he does. But it's really interesting. I mean, I think that he has a lot of narcissistic qualities. He has a lot of histrionic qualities. He seems rather borderline. He has a temper, a very hair-trigger temper. And there are a number of things, that's why I say there are a number of things that come together that make me say that he's borderline. But one thing, you don't, a woman scorned, there's nothing, what's that sentence? There's no fury, hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. Thank you. Because the two women in his office who were the biggest sources for Mr. Gurman's articles were two women who were jealous of his relationship with the other woman in the back of the car. Now, I'm not saying necessarily that they were attracted to him or wanted to be in a relationship with him, but they were jealous of his favoritism.
Inside the office. I want to play, And by the way, Dr. Lieberman, I think a family of politicians, maybe we identified here a genetic defect that he has. But let's do this. Let's take a look at Robert Tellis, because at one point in this case, and he may still do it, was representing himself. Here he is inside the courtroom.
It appears that they were visiting me simply to make sure that I received a message that if I don't shut my mouth, I'm going to be subject to constant watch, which constant watch, your court may know, is basically being thrown into a windowless room that is set somewhere between 60 and 65 degrees with no clothes on, 100% nude, with a thin, coarse blanket and no books, no entertainment whatsoever. It really is, when someone makes that threat, it's a serious threat. So I am concerned, and I say this to you on the record now, because should something happen to me in the future, or something happen in my legal work, I want everyone to know that this is no accident. I really am dumbfounded how the DA could justify continuing prosecution of the case, unless, frankly, the DA intends to help LVMPD cover up the severity of the misconduct.
Dr. Judy Ho, what did you think of that? It almost sounded like he thought he was going to fall some fate that some guy named Epstein may have fallen.
Yeah, of course, now he's the victim, right? And of course he would represent himself in trial. I mean, I get that he's also supposedly seeking counsel to represent him, but of course he's thinking, hey, I have a law degree, I'll just represent myself because I know everything and I know how to defend myself. But notice his demeanor, even in his presentation, there's that emotional emphaticness. It's like trying to drawing you in. He's a good speaker, right? He tries to captivate people, and I think that he's trying to do the same here.
All right, our guests are staying with us. When we come back, our next question we're going to take a look at was his life unraveling?
I did not touch anybody. I haven't hurt anybody. I am just being approached, and but you guys just want to take me down because I'm a public official.
Unfortunately, I can't comment on it, obviously, given that it's ongoing, and I hope you understand. And unfortunately, I can't comment on the case. I'm sorry. Again, sir, I cannot comment on the case in any respect whatsoever, sir. Again, I unfortunately can't comment on it. Again, my apologies, but I really can't comment on it. I can't comment, I'm sorry. Just wanted folks to know that, again, I'm just a guy who's trying to do his best.
You know your life is a mess when you are locked up in jail, accused of murder, and you decide to do an interview, and you really can't talk about anything, but you want to speak. That's the world of Robert Tellis, accused of murdering a Las Vegas journalist, investigative journalist, Jeff Garriman, who was doing some pieces on him. Now, this is not the first time, though, for Robert Tellis that he had some interaction with law enforcement. Scripps News Las Vegas has the story of Robert Tellis and domestic violence.
Do you need police, fire, or medical?
Yes, hi. Can you please send somebody here? My husband is going crazy.
This 911 call is from the 2020 domestic violence arrest of Robert Tellis. You can hear his worried wife.
He just won't leave us alone. He had too much to drink tonight, and it's just, me and my kids are scared.
The operator asked if anyone was hurt.
Anybody been hit or pushed, ma'am?
Well, he tried to hurt me, but it's fine. He hasn't touched me since.
Channel 13 also obtained the police body cam footage from that same night. This is video from when police arrived to the Clark County Public Administrator's Piccoli Ranch home.
Who did I hit?
You can hear Tellis arguing with police.
You just want to take me down because I'm a public official. I did not touch anybody. I haven't hurt anybody. I am just being approached, but you guys just want to take me down because I'm a public official. That's it. I'm a public official. I'm sure your supervisors will love to see this footage damage when they see it. I'm a public official.
Tellez repeatedly told police he was being, quote, taken down because of his public position, even asking the officer to call an official at the Clark County Detention Center to vouch for him at one point, and continued to deny he had done anything wrong.
I am a public official. I am not stupid enough to do any of that.
In the video, you can hear police say they spoke with family who said Tellez allegedly choked his wife.
There is sufficient evidence to book me right now. There is sufficient evidence to book you right now, yes. You're very certain about that? I am very certain about that.
Tellez was booked that night on domestic violence, battery, and resisting arrest.
Now that goes back in time. That goes back to 2020, 2 years before all this is happening. Brings me to my next question about Robert Tellez and whatever's happening here. Was his life unraveling? You know, this life of being a dad, a husband, a father, a public official. Yeah, you heard that as a public official. He kept reminding investigators there. Let's bring back in our experts, Dr. Judy Ho, Dr. Carol Lieberman. Dr. Carol Lieberman, was his life unraveling? And what does this domestic violence allegation tell us?
Yes, I think it was. You know, first of all, when he was growing up and he had all these relatives who were politicians and so on, he was used to being sort of given special privileges. And now that he is on his own, you know, and things weren't going so well. First of all, perhaps, you know, the story is that he was drinking with his wife on the Strip. And then when they got into an argument, and he said to her, kill me, you know, when they were arguing on the Strip. People apparently heard that. And so it's very bizarre. And in the end, you know, he managed to squeak out of it because she didn't press charges. But between the alcohol and the wife, and this was his second marriage, he had married a woman before. He had a child with a previous woman, a previous wife, and they were co-parenting. And now she was interviewed, and she said he wanted a wife. He wanted to go into politics, so he wanted a wife who would be like the wife of a politician, like flashy and doing, you know, volunteer work and so on to help his politics. And so that's why he left that first wife. So anyhow, yes, it seemed that he was getting older. You know, he's already 45, and if his career is over, I mean, how is he going to continue in politics?
I want to play for you, Dr. Judy Ho. Go back to that jailhouse interview with the reporter, because this issue of the domestic violence comes up, and he wants to talk about it. Let's take a look.
I'd like to speak about this domestic violence issue that's come out in the news.
Yeah, what do you have to say about that?
So, you know, I've tried to live my life doing good by others. I've always done that. Unfortunately, I have ADHD, and with that comes a kind of a tendency to go overboard when it comes to, you know, I guess eating things, or, you know, when I was a little kid, I was fat. And when I got older, when I started drinking, you know, I would drink one drink, but one would turn into a dozen before I knew it. I just would drink until I blacked out. And for a long time. And then, of course, I didn't drink every day. It's on those days where I would drink, I couldn't control myself. If I had one, I had to have a dozen, and I'd black out, not knowing what I did the next day. And regretfully, when I had a couple of years ago, when I blacked out, it scared my wife, and it scared my kids. I didn't hurt them, but I scared them enough to call the police on me. And after that day, I stopped drinking. I said, I'm not perfect, and I just wanted to try to, I just want to try to do my best and be the best person I can be. And
all right, I think you have some things to work with there, Dr. Judy Ho.
Oh boy, Vinny. So yes, let's blame his extreme rage issues all on his ADHD. Let's just create more misconceptions about what ADHD might look like. And then it was just like a meandering set of historical events. Who knows which ones have happened from, oh, I was a fat kid. I'm not sure if he's trying to get some sympathy there or some support, and saying, well, I just drank too much and I blacked out. So again, that lack of responsibility for what happened that night, and saying, okay, my wife and my kids were scared. But when you listen to the 911 tape, it is so vivid the way that she's communicating that fear. She's saying he's going crazy. We don't know what to do. The kids had to pry him off of her because he wouldn't let go of his wife, and he was being menacing towards her. I mean, the kids were involved. That's traumatic for them. And his only excuse is, I have ADHD. I was a fat child, and maybe I have a drinking problem, but when I drink, I black out. And I don't remember what happened, but it must not have been that bad because I'm a good person.
I want to take another look at those backseat images of Tellis's alleged affair obtained by the Las Vegas Review-Journal. And as we look at them, Dr. Carol Lieberman, is there any connection between the drinking, the alleged domestic violence, the alleged affair, in what is going on in the life of Robert Tellis?
He's out of control. All of those are examples of ways that his life is out of control. And yes, I want to underline that this is not from ADHD. You do not have these kinds of behaviors. You can't blame it on that.
So, Dr. Judy Ho, we look at Robert Tellis, we look at his life, we know where he is now, getting ready to defend himself for murder. How do you see all of these issues playing off one another that's going on in his life?
Well, I think that one of his strategies is going to try to elicit sympathy from the jury and the public. I think he understands that there's going to be a court of public opinion here, and he's trying to get on the good side of that public opinion and hopefully sway the jury also in that process. And Vinnie, this is somebody who knows how to manipulate the public to a degree, right? He was an elected official. People believed in him, believed in at least somewhat an inherent goodness in him. And then behind closed doors, the stories that you were hearing from the people who really interacted with him, from his family to the people who worked for him, it's an extremely different picture. And I think that for as long as this trial goes on, we're going to start seeing the splits in that. He's not going to be able to hold it all together the entire time.
Yeah, and I believe he will not be able to resist taking the stand in his own defense, whether he is or is not representing himself. He will make that decision. I want to thank our guest, forensic neuropsychologist, Dr. Judy Ho. Be sure to check out her book, The New Rules of Attachment. And also a big thank you to forensic psychiatrist, Dr. Carol Lieberman. All right, folks. The folks in my business, this business of reporting and journalism, we're kind of taking this one a little personally. I understand that. But there's a reason. Because the job of journalists like Jeff German are to keep people who have some level of power and control over our lives, to hold them accountable for their actions. And they should be able to do that without the fear of being murdered. And from my perspective, that's why this case is really important. I'm Vinnie Politan. We'll keep digging for answers as the investigation continues. There you have it. If you want to see more in-depth reporting on the latest true crime stories, you can see me every weeknight, 8 p.m. Eastern on Closing Arguments. Thank you so much for downloading. And as always, please don't forget to hug the kids.
This podcast is a production of Court TV. Go to CourtTV.com for more content, trials on demand, and to find out how to watch Court TV in your area.